basically, there's a bunch of outrage about it on TikTok because essentially, it's our dog whistling eugenics, just kind of the phrasing they used and stuff. And the whole point, basically, she tied it back to Edward Bernays because the kind of the way the ad is, it's not selling you genes, it's selling you like an identity or whatever.
Okay.
So that she tied it to Edward Bernays, and she was talking about the thing we were talking about before we started recording, the marketing cigarettes as like freedom torches or whatever,
torches of freedom.
Torches of freedom, and the fact that like breakfast is the most important meal of the day was just an ad campaign. Like there's no real, well, I don't know, maybe they did, but at the time there was no scientific evidence that.
Well, nothing confirmed. It was more like, okay, science has shown that if you have a good breakfast, you're more alert during the day. So suddenly it gets advertised. It gets morphed through advertising into breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Right. And ultimately at the end, when it came down to it, pretty much the reason why they came up with that was because they were trying to sell bacon.
Yeah. Well, that's it. What's funny is that I encountered Bernays for the first time when I watched that documentary, the BBC documentary, The Century of the Self. And, that's another one of those things that landed into my worldview project, because that was one of those things that when I caught the documentary, it was like, oh, yeah, this explains a lot, or at least it helped me to kind of orient myself in the world that I lived in by saying, okay, if all of this stuff is true, as far as Bernays and the whole public relations thing, which then became the advertising industry, which then became the attention economy, you can draw a line now. How accurate all that stuff is still part of what I'm sorting through, these days, on my worldview project, because, I'm looking at things like The Century of the Self and Ishmael and all these books that I've read over the years. And now I'm like trying to build a new puzzle, a new picture with them and say, oh, does this still count or not? So I brought the book Propaganda in case you wanted to talk about it.
And it I guess I've kind of always, we know what propaganda is, and I've always kind of known that, advertising is selling me something. But it's funny because it's like the worldview thing and how we come to the worldview, and we've touched on it in previous episodes, as far as like, do you believe what you believe because you believe it, or because it's just you've been hearing it your whole life and you just accepted it without ever critically thinking about it? And it just kind of like, I just felt like that this book, Propaganda, and this whole idea of propaganda and how it's used essentially against us, it's like it's essentially like, I don't know what, like hacking our mind in a sense, but
yeah, not in a good way either.
I'm sure that anybody that's listening right now is probably wondering what they're doing. And so just real quick, before we get any further, let's just introduce the podcast. Welcome to Occasionally Philosophical, a podcast where me and my father talk about worldviews and other things.
And life.
I'm Mark,
and I'm Doug.
Yeah, so
anyway, where were you?
Well, we were talking about this idea of, propaganda, and I recently, was introduced to Edward Bernays through TikTok of all places. But TikTok is not just kids dancing. It's pretty much anything. It's just like any other social media. It's
I wouldn't know about that.
It's whatever you make.
I have never been on TikTok.
Your algorithm is curated based on what you like. So, but anyways, Yeah, so I was introduced to the whole Edward Bernays and the father of public relations, and I sped through well, I shouldn't say I sped through, but I listened to the audible version of the book yesterday. It was only about 4 hours, which is why I was able to do it. And, as you can see from the book right there, it's not a super long book. But yeah, it got me thinking about our whole podcast and worldviews, and the fact that the thing that struck me, which is kind of what made me want to talk about this on today's episode, was that whole breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I've always, I've been taught ever since, oh, breakfast is the most important meal. You got to get your, first meal to conquer the day or whatever, starts your metabolism up fast, like right away, or whatever the various things that we've been told. And then it's like I find out through this Edward Bernays thing that essentially breakfast is the most important meal of the day was just an ad campaign to sell bacon, pretty much. Which, yeah.
But you forget that.
Right.
Well, it was I think I told you the story once. It was we were still, where was I living? I think it was up in Sacramento, and I was at the gym. It was 24-hour fitness, and I'm on the cardio machines, and there's a couple of young women, next to me talking. And the only reason that it stands out in my mind was because I had been flipping through a magazine a couple of weeks earlier, and I had seen an ad from one of the diamond companies, De Beers Diamonds or whatever it was, which basically in this ad, it was saying that and it was targeted to women, basically saying that if the man who's proposing to you hasn't spent 25% of his annual salary on the ring, forget him.
Yeah.
He's not worth it, right? And I thought to myself, Jesus, that's 25% of your annual salary. That's a lot of money for an engagement ring, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thought that, again, from the advertising standpoint, because of my own experience with ads and stuff, I was like, whoa, that's going to be dangerous. And then there I was just a few weeks later, and these two young women are basically saying that this one of them was anticipating the question. Right. And it was like, yeah, he better show up with like a big rock.
Right.
And I thought to myself, I was like shaking my head. Obviously I'm not going to say anything. It's not my conversation.
Yeah.
But I just shook my head about it because I went, whoa, that ad's only been out a few weeks or a few months. And already it's filtered that deep into like people's they actually believe it. Like, yeah, this is what a guy should do. I'm like, I'd hate to be the guy, like getting ready to propose to a woman who had that belief. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but whew. But again, it's just the power of advertising to shape how people believe without their consent. And that was the gerrymander thing. I've always talked to you about that Four Arguments book. I never asked you to read it, but
right.
That's his point. Was, hey, I'm an ad man, and I just realized that I'm doing damage to people.
Right.
Him and his partner shut their advertising agency down as a result of that.
Right. And it's all in, most of it at least is in service of capitalism.
Most of it?
Well, pretty much all of it.
I mean,
yeah.
I was just trying to think. Hold on a second. Have I ever seen an ad that wasn't profit oriented?
Well,
I guess the public service ads.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like, in a way, what was I gonna say?
I don't know. I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah, I mean, it all pretty much serves capitalism, and part of one of the things in the book that I remember was just, it's like the reason why they have to push so hard to sell is because it's not about like providing people with stuff. It's not like, oh, I think you know, you need this iPad, right? Because it's going to help you, I don't know, write and do whatever that you want to do, be creative or whatever. It's not, I need to sell it for profit and I need to convince you that you need it, whether or not you need it or not. And then part of, I'm kind of getting off on not what I wanted. But basically, they have all these products. Like, I need to make money, right? So I manufacture 100 widgets, right? Now I have to sell these widgets because if I don't sell them, then I just wasted all this money.
Right.
Right. So now I need to advertise and I need to convince people. It's like I can't have my,
Well,
bacon sitting around not being sold. I need to make money.
Well, it's overproduction for
Right.
one thing. It's getting rid of the excess production.
Right.
Right. But the other thing is that there are things that people need,
Right.
right? Water, a certain amount of food, shelter from the elements, relationships and all that kind of stuff. There are human needs. And then there are the things that advertising convinces us that we need.
Right.
And that's that was the gerrymander and his partner when they shut down their advertising agency, was they realized that that's what, was going on. They were manufacturing needs. And Bernays, in that book, basically that the whole public relations thing was what they called the manufacture of consent.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then you get later, that book was written in 1928. So you get Noam Chomsky about 50 years later writing a book on political theory of the manufacture of consent.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's way off target. So we won't go to Chomsky, but the idea is that we're creating needs that aren't real.
Right.
And that's the advertising game, and then you get, and all the memes are out there, Mark. You probably see more of them than I do, right?
Yeah.
About, we go to jobs that we hate, or we get in a car and sit in traffic to go to a job that we hate, to work with people that we don't like, to make money, to buy things that we don't need, et cetera. I've seen versions of that meme floating around somewhere. But everybody seems to recognize it, right? But yet the engine keeps going, and this ties back to Daniel Quinn, right?
Yeah.
The voice of Mother Culture, because it's relentless,
Right.
If you're on TikTok or if you're on your phone scrolling, whether it's doom scrolling or actual productive scrolling, you're seeing these ads all the time, right? The ads that for whether it's you need to go on vacation, or your hair is gray and it shouldn't be, or your beard's gray and it shouldn't be, or you're not wearing the right style clothes, or you don't smell right, and it's just on and on and on. And then it's not just the advertising though. Like if you go to Medium or you go to one of these blogs that collect a bunch of essays by a bunch of different people, half of those people are talking about life hacks, how to get yourself more productive, how to get more done in less time, mind hacks, how to not get caught by this or that or this other thing, and maximize. You're never good enough, right? It's that,
right.
And after a while it's just propaganda, because it's all feeding the machine.
Right. And even to kind of, I guess, piggyback on that a little bit, even TikTok, social media it's funny because most of them, it's like they started out, it seemed like, it was just my friends and just pictures of them on vacation or pictures of them out to dinner with their family or whatever.
Well, yeah, that was the whole idea of MySpace, Facebook, and all that stuff.
Right. But ultimately, the end goal always was, it's to make money. Once again, capitalism, everything is about profit. So they made this thing to eventually make money, right? And now my point I'm getting to is that now it's like you're scrolling on TikTok. That's pretty much my social media of choice at the particular moment. But it's like you have somebody, talking about, Edward Bernays and giving you some information and, trying to teach you something, right? And then the very next swipe up to scroll to the next post, and it's like, you start watching it and it's like, oh, there's, the person's talking. And the next thing you know, it's like you realize that they're trying to sell you like a microphone or,
cookware or
or
whatever.
something. It's like you start watching it and initially it seems like it's one of these educational or I'm just trying to share with you some information. And then by the time, whether it's halfway through or by the end of it, it's like at some point it's like, oh, click on the link in my bio and you can buy this coffee cup or
Whatever it is. Yeah. Well, that's, and a lot of that, and again, I'm not really conversant in it because I don't follow social media that much, but like the influencer economy, why do you want to be an influencer? The only reason you want to be an influencer is to have enough followers so that people will say, hey, you've got 100,000 followers, pitch my product and I'll pay you.
Yeah, it's essentially.
I don't know if that's the real motivation to be an influencer, but it seems to be.
Well, I would say that it is because there's no essentially an influencer is like an independent ad agency or whatever, or independent because it's like some people might be doing it just, they might have some sort of altruistic, oh, I just want to share whatever it is that I'm into.
Right.
Whatever that my hobby or my interest or my area of expertise, maybe your initial goal is like, I just want to share this with people. But like, if you're being honest with yourself, because we live in this capitalist society, there's always that, whether it might not be in the forefront of your mind, but a lot of times you are doing something because ultimately you hope that it's going to pay off. I could even use this podcast as an example. Yeah, like we do want to just spread whatever our own version of.
Well, I think at least for me, I thought that the purpose was to in real time work through the things that we trip over, in our daily lives, and not just you and I, but other people too.
Yeah.
It's like, it's easy to go on TikTok or whatever and have the answer, right? Okay, yeah, I've looked at the capitalist system and here's what's wrong with it. And here's 3 things you can do to feel better about your participation in it.
Right.
Kind of thing. And that's not it, at least not for me. It's what do I do when I get like something hits me in the face. Like last week we touched on the hot rail, right?
Yeah.
Because of, well, just the way the conversation went, there was something personal in our history that triggered something in your current life, which is you're marrying a black woman, which means that you're dealing with the structural racism on a pretty much of a daily basis because she faces it on a daily basis. And then she comes home and you talk and there it is. And, and so those are the kinds of issues, like they come up and how do we work through them without like assuming the position that everyone should do what we do. Right.
Right.
It's just these are open questions and tomorrow or later this afternoon, we're both going to have to go out into the world and interact with people.
Right.
Right. And these people are carrying a bunch of attitudes and beliefs and what have you that are opaque to us until we actually engage them in conversation. Right. And that's when all these issues, whether it's how effective propaganda is, whether you're being led by it, whether you think that it's all, I'm not bothered. Advertising doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And then you're like me at 21 years old after I've talking to a telemarketer for 10 minutes telling her that no, advertising doesn't bother me. And then opening cabinets in my house and finding almost every product was the stuff that was advertised on TV or in the newspaper.
And I find that phenomenon kind of funny, because I think most people, I mean, I see it once again, I see it on social media in the comment section, like everybody thinks that they're not affected by it, or not everybody, but a lot of people have this idea. I mean, even in day-to-day conversations, it's like you talk to people, oh no, that doesn't affect me. And it's like, dude, you're wearing Nikes, you have an iPhone, like, what do you mean it doesn't work on you?
Yeah, it's like look at what you own and then tell me that it's not
right.
At least partially influenced.
Right, because it's like you might, you have Nike shoes on. We talked about before we started recording that, yeah, I tend to think that like advertising doesn't work as much on me, and the only reason why I really think that is because my eyes are kind of open to it, partly because of two of the books that's on the desk and other books as well, and our conversations, and looking at stuff and thinking about it a little more critically. So, but at the same time, like I said before we start, I still wear Jordans. I like Jordans. I justify it in various reasons of why I like Jordans. I say it's nostalgia because, I was, 5 years old when Jordan came into the league. And so I grew up, I was into basketball when I was younger. And, I grew up watching Jordan, and you want to be like Mike and all that stuff. And so you got to buy the shoes, right? Oh, if I want to play like Jordan, I got to buy the shoes. Like I said, now I justify it and I say it's nostalgia. Oh, they're good quality, which is true. They're good quality. They last longer, like we've talked about in the past as well, about when you bought me Payless shoes and
they'd wear out in 3 weeks.
Yeah, Jordans, Nikes are better quality than some other shoes. Now, are they the best quality shoes? I don't know. Is the $200 price tag on Jordans quote unquote worth it? Are they that much better quality than some $80 shoes or $100 shoes? But once again, regardless of whether you think it does, it is affecting you to a certain extent. And yeah, you can fight against it. You're like, I'm not going to follow the trends, just because Jordans aren't maybe not the most popular shoe anymore. I still like them, so I still wear them, or, maybe to your example that we, once again, before the podcast started about peanut butter.
Yeah.
In those type of situations, like that's when I would fight against the advertising, because in my mind, I'm like, I don't know, the ShopRite or the Stop and Shop brand peanut butter. It's peanut butter. Like, what does it really matter if it's Jif or Skippy or whoever, or whatever brand?
But it's that it's advertised. So you're in the store and, now you've got like the cognitive scientists and stuff that like availability bias. Like if you've seen something recently, you're going to be drawn to something like that.
Yeah.
It in the car business, somebody comes in thinking, oh, nobody buys this particular model car, right? I'm going to be unique,
Yeah.
And then you buy the car and you drive off the lot and like every other car you pass is that model. And you go, why didn't I see these before?
Right.
And so that's all in play. So, as far as all that goes and like the way that we're influenced, and I think that segues into something that I wanted to kind of tie up the hot rail topic that we opened last week.
Yeah.
Which was that my reaction to when we were talking about structural racism, and then my reaction to when I first heard the term white fragility. And I was like, no, I'm not fragile. And then you said that the white people that are fragile, and I won't use the word that you used, but they're fragile as hell.
Right.
And so after you left last week, I was, you know what? Maybe I did overreact. Maybe there is something there. So I went and I started reviewing, like, when in my life did I first encounter that term?
Right.
And it was like, all right, it was before Black Lives Matter, before that whole thing happened. And at the time, I was involved in going through a history of whiteness. And I want to say the author's name is Nell Painter, but I might be wrong. But at any rate, it was this historical explanation or examination of how even whiteness expanded. Like, it was a very narrow group of people at first. And then as immigrants came from Italy and from Ireland, who were, Caucasian, they were still excluded up until a point, until that definition of whiteness expanded, right?
Right.
To include them, but while still excluding, anybody not, with this color skin that we have. So I was like, all right. So I encountered the white fragility thing at that time. So what was it about that bothered me? So then I started going, okay, I picked up the book because I hang out in Barnes and Nobles a lot, and I flipped through it, and I was like, it's really detailed and a lot of intersectional stuff and all that. And I was like, and at the time it was like a tangent from what I was really like focused on for myself. And then I was like, all right, I'm not going to read the book, but let me do what I normally do. So I go looking for reviews.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, go to the New York Review of Books, or I'll go to the Atlantic Monthly or Harper's Magazine or something like that to check their reviews. And what I got out of those reviews pretty much supported my intuition, was that it was binary. It was either you're with us or against us. And I felt like, no, that the weight of 400 years of slavery and stuff is pretty heavy. And if you hit a white person who's never had to face it before, they're going to wobble a little bit.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable, but it's not fragile. Fragile is like you crack and you can't even hear it. And I thought, no, that's not going to open up a conversation, And then I had mentioned, like, sitting with those guys after work when I was working at the moving company and just witnessing the pain and the anger that they carried at some of the stuff that happened. And I'm not patting myself on the back for that either, because I probably missed 10 times as many opportunities to be a witness to that than I actually caught.
Right.
So, hey, I'm no saint here, but it's a real issue. Right. And when you mentioned to me like that thing, it's not that bad, right, is what they hear all the time. And I went, well, yeah, if you're a white person and you get a paper cut, yeah, it's not that bad. But if you're a black person and that paper cut that the white person is saying it's not that bad, that's the 879th that you've had to deal with that day.
Right.
Yeah. So it's that death by 1,000 cuts thing that they dump on us. So while we were talking, I also had been working with these AI tools and noticing that they can very subtly frame something in such a way that it can lead you to conclusions that you didn't actually intend on taking or going to. Right. I don't know if your experience has shown you that at all, but like, if you're not careful, the AI can kind of hijack your thinking by offering, oh, would you like to go this way or that way? So what I want to do here live, just to prove my point or disprove my point, is I have three versions of a question on white fragility. Yeah. One which is neutral, just looking for information. One which shows a slight inclination towards accepting that frame, and another version of the same question that's slightly like rejecting the frame, and then to see how the AI answers it and whether it's leading in a certain direction.
Right.
All right. So My neutral, and do you have a version of ChatGPT? Because I want to see if it's the same on both too. All right, so here's the question. Do you have ChatGPT up? All right, so here's the question. What are the core arguments of Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, and how have they been received by scholars and the public? Does that sound pretty neutral to you?
Yeah. What is it? What are the core arguments of Robin
DiAngelo's White Fragility, and how have they been received by scholars and the public? Okay, so I've got my answers starting to show up now.
Yeah, mine is too.
All right, so mine reads, I'll read the first paragraph. Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, 2018, explores how white people often react defensively when confronted with discussions of race and racism. Here's a breakdown of the core arguments and how they've been received by scholars and the public.
Yeah.
Same on yours?
Well, it's similar. Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, sparked intense debate in both academic and public spheres. Here's a summary of her core arguments, followed by how the book has been received by scholars and the broader public.
Okay. So in my version here, there are 5 core arguments of white fragility.
Yeah.
Whoops, hit the microphone. White fragility is a defense mechanism. Racism as a system, not an event. White socialization and insulation. Color blindness and niceness as barriers, and performativity versus accountability.
I don't have none of that.
You don't have none of that?
No, mine also has 5, but it says core arguments of white fragility. Number 1 is white fragility defined. Number 2 is white socialization and racial comfort. Next is individual versus systemic racism. Perpetuation of racial inequity through defensiveness, and the need for racial stamina.
Okay. And then reception. Under reception, I've got academic and scholarly reception, supportive views. Many scholars in critical race theory and education have praised white fragility for making systemic racism and white defensiveness accessible to a mainstream audience. It is often used in corporate and educational diversity training. The criticisms, there are 4: overgeneralization, circular reasoning, lack of empirical rigor, and paternalism.
So some of that was the same. I mean, the first part, the positive, was, I mean, it's worded differently, but it's
same.
Essentially the same thing.
How about the criticisms?
The criticisms, it does say overgeneralization of white people, treating them as a monolith. Right. Lack of empirical evidence.
Okay, that we got that.
Overemphasis on guilt without a clear solution.
Okay, it's not. I don't have that.
And then treating whiteness as fixed and static.
Okay, all right. So it was different. All right, so the public reception now under mine, it says bestseller status, became a #1 New York Times bestseller, especially during the 2020 protests.
That's almost exactly what mine says.
And then it says popular criticism, conservative backlash. Many right-leaning commentators denounced it as divisive or anti-white. And progressive skepticism, some activists on the left questioned the usefulness of the book in advancing material or policy change, calling it more focused on personal guilt and systemic action. And then there was some satirical cultural pushback. Yeah. It's been parodied or criticized in think pieces and social media for encouraging performative wokeness without deep transformation.
Yeah, mine. New York Times bestseller. It was embraced by many white liberal readers seeking to do the work of anti-racism. Praise, it says, many readers said it helped them to understand their own defensiveness. It was often included in anti-racist reading lists, especially for corporate or nonprofit diversity training. And then the criticism from the left I have three criticism, one from the left, one from the right, and then there's a third one that says accusations of performative allyship. So from the left, it says some progressive voices argue that white fragility individualizes racism too much, turning anti-racism into a matter of personal guilt and introspection rather than collective political action. Authors like Abram X. Kendi or Kinga Yamata, I'm sorry, I probably,
It's not even listed on my page.
but whatever. This other author with the last name Taylor push for more structural solutions. So that would basically, yeah, it's like it's too much about the individual versus the structural, but which sounds like partly why you seem to take issue with it a little bit. And then from the right, conservatives and centrists often attack the book as divisive, overly ideological, or rooted in identity politics, promoting white guilt and anti-white racism. That's pretty much.
Is there a question at the bottom after the summary?
No.
No? Yeah, mine ends with a question. Would you like a brief list of key academic critiques or suggested readings for a counterpoint?
Or, well, mine says, I mean, it does say something at the end, but it's not a question. But it says, if you'd like, I can help compare white fragility with other popular anti-racist texts like How to Be Anti-Racist or Me and White Supremacy. Or I could create a video essay or podcast script analyzing its impact.
All right, but you see what it's doing. It's already leading you in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Right? And the same thing here. Now, this one here, this is a neutral, and mine just says, would you like a brief list of key academic critiques or suggested readings for a counterpoint? So it's, do you want to see the other side? So that's fairly, all right. Now, let's try a different question.
Should I start a new one or just, yeah, I guess.
Just, start a new one. All right. So the next question, which is a defensive, this one's a little bit skeptical. So maybe this would be the question that I would have typed in.
Right.
Why does white fragility feel like it shuts down dialogue by labeling any discomfort as proof of racism? Right? Now, what kind of answer are we going to get to that question?
What was it? Why does white fragility shut down any dialogue?
Feels like it shuts down dialogue. Why does white fragility feel like it shuts down dialogue by labeling any discomfort as proof of racism?
On any dialogue by
labeling any discomfort as proof of racism. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, go. What do you got?
Well, it started off by giving me a compliment, which we've talked about it, I think, in previous episodes. It says, that's a sharp and common critique of white fragility, and you're not alone in noticing it.
All right, so that's a little pat you on the back, right? So that it's already like starting to lead you. Oh, you're a smart guy.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead.
Robin DiAngelo's central claim in the book is that white people in North America are socialized into a racially insulated world, and when that insulation is disrupted, e.g., when someone points out a racist comment or systemic advantage, they often respond with defensiveness, anger, or guilt, or silence, what she calls white fragility. These reactions, she argues, function to maintain the racial status quo because they make honest conversations about racism difficult.
Does it list points?
Yeah, so the next little section is why it feels like it shuts down dialogue.
Right.
And one of them is circular reasoning, which was mentioned in your last one.
Right.
Pathologizing discomfort.
Right.
Lack of individual context.
Right.
Overemphasis on white feelings. And then the last one is moral framing.
All right. So here's what I got. Same question. mine says, that's a thoughtful question. And it's one that comes up often in critiques of white fragility. And it lists 4 points. Point number 1 is circular logic. If you object, you're fragile. If you agree, you're admitting that you're fragile. So it's a no-win scenario, right? That point number 2 is that discomfort equals racism. This book often treats emotional discomfort such as guilt, anger, or defensiveness as signals of racism or racial bias. White discomfort can be a signal of deeper issues, but not all discomfort is racist in itself. Okay. Lack of dialogue space. Some people feel that the book frames racism as a fixed identity rather than a set of behaviors or systems that can be changed. And then point number 4 is the oversimplification of white identity, right? And the critics say that D'Angelo treats whiteness as monolithic, right?
Right.
So all white people are the same, essentially.
Yeah.
And so in defense of the book, ChatGPT says, to be fair, D'Angelo's goal isn't to make white people feel comfortable. It's to challenge them to reflect on how they benefit from and participate in systemic racism, often unconsciously, which is a point that I will grant her. Absolutely. Right? It's just that when you call me fragile, we can't talk at that point.
Yeah.
Right? And though it says the bigger question, the ChatGPT says whether white fragility is the best vehicle for that message is a matter of debate. Some readers find it eye-opening and necessary. Others find it alienating or counterproductive. And then ChatGPT asks me if I'd like to explore alternative frameworks that encourage racial dialogue.
Yeah.
So in a sense, even though I came at it negatively, it hasn't really like nailed that negative thing. It's giving me a chance.
Yeah.
At this particular point. How about you? What happens at the end of yours?
Mine, the counterpoint. It says counterpoint from D'Angelo's perspective. D'Angelo would argue that discomfort is necessary, which is kind of what yours said. Fragility isn't being punished, but named because defensiveness has historically been used to derail anti-racist efforts. She's trying to shift the conversation from intent to impact and from individual guilt to collective responsibility. But even many people who are aligned with her goals find her tone overly prescriptive and her model not very dialogical. And then the ends with some middle ground, which is kind of, I feel like where you're going, is not all discomfort is fragility. Some of it is honest questioning or healthy skepticism. Being open to a self-examination is important, but so is making space for disagreement, curiosity, and evolution. The most productive conversations about race tend to happen when there's trust, humility, and room for mutual vulnerability, not just accusation and defense. So, yeah. And then it ends with the suggestion at the end is, would you like a breakdown of how different scholars, including Black thinkers, have responded to white fragility? There's a wide range of opinions, both supportive and critical.
Okay. So again, it's not locking down. Neither one of the models is locking into a frame yet.
Right.
Okay, good. So now let's try the slightly, what was that one? The one who's supportive.
Right.
Okay. And that reads, how can the concept of white fragility help white people better understand their role in perpetuating systemic racism? Right. So here's someone who's a fan.
How can the concept of white fragility
help white people?
Help white people. How can the help white people see better
understand their role in perpetuating systemic racism? All right, what do you got?
All right. Let's see. Number 1, it reframes discomfort as a signal, not a threat. White fragility refers to defensive reactions many white people have when their racial worldviews, positions, or disadvantages are challenged. Yeah, and it has I think that I'm assuming this is a quote from the book. It says, "Why am I reacting this way? What belief or assumption of mine is being challenged?" So, number 2 reveals why racism persists without overt hate, which is, part of that, like, micro transgression or
Microaggressions.
microaggressions, transgressions. Yeah, those
Yeah.
microaggressions, just like the "can I touch your hair" or whatever. Like,
Yeah, that stupid thing. Right?
yeah, you don't have to overtly hate black people to still be racist. You might, it's just
Well, it's all the things that you do to something that's different, an object that's ooh, let me examine it instead of treating them like
a
another human being.
right?
You know?
Number 3 interrupts the cycle of defensiveness, silence, and status quo.
All right.
Yeah, but wait. When white people feel accused or uncomfortable, they may retreat or derail the conversation. This can make it nearly impossible for people of color to express real experiences of racism.
Mm-hmm.
By learning to tolerate discomfort, white people create space for truth-telling, avoid recentralizing themselves in racial dialogues, and begin to see how their reactions can protect the very systems that they're trying to dismantle. 4th is encourages racial self-awareness. That's pretty self-explanatory. And number 5 is promotes humility and growth, which is also fairly self-explanatory.
Here's what I got. I got 5 things too. The first one is the book helps, or the concept helps you to recognize your own defensive behaviors. Interestingly enough, denial, I'm not racist. 2, minimization. It's not that bad.
Right.
Right? Deflection. What about black on black crime?
Right.
Withdrawal, which is just shutting down the conversation. You don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
So it's this is a positive. By naming these kinds of reactions, white people can become more self-aware. And then you can start to, oh, okay, I just did that. Sorry, my bad.
Right.
Right. And then number 2 is interrupting the cycle of silence. So if you react fragile, then it shuts down the conversation, right?
Right.
And so it perpetuates this cycle of silence. You can't ever talk about it because as soon as a white person hears about 400 years, this thing that I've been 400 years of racial, shit I've been carrying on my back,
Yeah.
Here, you want to look at it? No,
Right.
keep that away from me.
Yeah.
It's just so that it perpetuates that cycle of silence. It also, the concept, at least here, it says that it helps white people to understand that racism really is structural. It's not just individual. It's the way the world is built.
Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit last week when I mentioned that during the summer of George Floyd, I realized that people like us have to move through the world like ghosts. If you're a black person looking at white people walking through the world, it's kind of like ghosts because we just walk through all the obstacles that you trip over all the time.
Right.
I don't know if that's really true. It's just my,
the metaphor that you came up
it
with.
was the metaphor that I came up with that worked during that particular gruesome summer. And then number 4 is that accepting that intent doesn't erase impact, right? So just because my intention is to be cool, it doesn't change the fact that those impacts are still hitting those people every day, your fiance every day.
Right. And that's actually funny. Just the intention, this is kind of a side note, but just intention is not always like everyone, I had good intentions, but the result was still negative. So
yeah, you get a pat on the back for your intentions, but your execution was not so good.
Like, it's like, I didn't intend to hurt your feelings,
but you did.
But you did though.
So can I get an apology?
Regardless of your intent. Yeah, exactly. That's
and then the last thing on here was becoming better allies. So obviously, if people like us work through our unconscious biases that we may still be holding on to, we become a better ally, Right. And that
Right.
makes sense. I'm not arguing with that. Like I said, even after all of this, I still don't like the framing. I still don't like that you're either with us or against us. You're either actively anti-racist or you're a racist. There's no
Yeah.
middle ground. And that, I think, doesn't open up the conversational space that
It doesn't open, I would say it doesn't open it up enough. Because obviously
he's not totally wrong. Let me put it that way. Well,
Or wait.
the anti-racist is he.
Okay,
But
sorry.
yes, she's not totally wrong.
Yeah.
She's actually onto something important.
Well,
It's just that the way that it got framed in the public mind is
I also sort of back to the propaganda, touching on the propaganda, the language.
yeah.
Because from what I see, you have a problem with the fragility part.
Yeah.
Like it's that word. Like she probably could have used a different word.
Yeah, tell me that it's uncomfortable and I'll agree. Yes, it's
White-
wickedly uncomfortable.
White uncomfortability or whatever.
White discomfort.
White discomfort.
Then yes.
So, there's always, but then I guess you could always go back to, you know what? Black people we've been saying this stuff for hundreds of years. So maybe I have to use this charged language in order for you to even listen. Because if I said white discomfort, maybe nobody would even be talking about it. But because I use this fragile word, now we're even having the conversation.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's good, right? It has the conversation. It gets the conversation started. But what happened, at least as far as the public perception, is that it became solidified, right? Now, fragile is the word. It's no longer pointing at white people being extremely uncomfortable when being confronted with systemic racism. It's that they crumble at it and then their voices are silenced, right? And that's different, right? Because like I had this analogy, like, okay, the white people have had the playing field all to themselves forever, right? And if you met the white people's requirements, you're allowed to play on the field. So you get your Denzel Washingtons and, blah, 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 blah. That get to, they get to play on the field. But all the other people are excluded. Now, if you take the barriers down and let everybody on the field, all those white people that had all this room to move around are suddenly bumping into people, right, that they never had to bump into before. And so while their complaints need to calm down there, Junior. It'll be all right. They can't just say that any of their complaints don't matter because, hey, my life is changing too, right? Now that you have equal participation, that means that certain things that I took for granted, I have to get used to. And you know who's going to be able to teach them how to get used to that? It's not going to be other white people. Black people are going to be able to teach white people how to deal with being told no.
Right.
Right. And so as these barriers start to come down, that's really where the healing is going to come from, because it's going to be, hey, you know what? We learned how to live with all this crap and not be crushed by it. You guys are acting like you're going to be crushed by it. Let us show you how you can deal.
And that last part of it, the statement, that's the reason why I said what I said, that white people are fragile, because that is your reaction. It's like they say equality or what is it? When equality doesn't equal oppression or whatever. It's like you feel like because you've had this privilege your whole life that somehow like these, other people getting the same privilege that you have feels like oppression, but it's not though.
It does. It feels like oppression to them. And you have to acknowledge that whether it's not oppression is not the point. It feels like it to them and it has to be acknowledged. Yes, I know what it feels like, but right. And it's that not acknowledging that part of it. Because look, if you've been privileged your whole, and I mean privileged,
Yeah.
as privileged as is possible to be, when that's taken away from you, right? That is going to be uncomfortable, and you are not going to know what to do,
Right.
right? And you're going to be angry about it.
Yeah.
And that's what you see. You see a lot of people that are angry about it because their guaranteed privilege has suddenly been called into question.
And that's the fragility part.
And they're angry, right? Okay. Acknowledge that in the same way that you acknowledge that when you're sitting down with a black person and they're trying to tell you about the death by 1,000 cuts, you witness it. You say, yes, I understand. Is there something I can do right now? Or just listen, right? That's it. That's all you can do. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to run out into the world and start ripping barriers down when you don't even know where they are?
Yeah.
You know, and that, so it's like, it's not that D'Angelo and that group is wrong per se. I just feel that if we come at it with that, like, you're with us or against us, the people that are pissed because they're losing their privilege, that's just going to they're going to dig in. Right.
And it's to me,
and if you want to say that that's the fragility part, well, then, yeah, I'll grant you that. But it's by framing it that way that actually enacts the fragile reaction, at least in my view.
but like here's my final thought, which kind of goes, white fragility is not a moral condemnation. It's a mirror. When white people use it as a tool to better understand their emotional reactions and social conditioning, it becomes a quick gateway to greater empathy, accountability, and action against systematic racism.
Yes.
So I would argue that your reaction is the way you're reacting to it is the definition of white fragility.
Yeah, but see, that's the whole problem with the frame.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Is that I can't have a legitimate reaction against something that I feel is counterproductive without falling victim to the very binary frame. And I reject binaries as a general rule.
Yeah.
Anytime you set something up as it's either this or that, you've missed a lot in my mind, right? It's the same thing, politics. You're a Republican or you're a Democrat, right? And now you're locked into a certain set of beliefs, a certain set of attitudes and stuff. And so it's that... I'm not saying that,
but I think this specific subject actually is actually is binary, because you either are racist or you hate other people that don't look like you, or you don't. I don't think there's an in between.
All right, so you're sitting,
I agree that
are you sitting there right now and telling me that I'm a racist?
I'm saying that
Mark, I raised you, and you're marrying a black woman.
It's not, but
you're
either with us. I'm not saying you're racist.
You are the frame that you're using, and you
said it. You're either with us or against us.
Yeah.
So are you with it or against it? That's it's
with what?
With not being racist.
With living in a world in which people are, like Martin Luther King said, judged by the content of the character, not the color of their skin. That's the world that I want to live in. And that's the world that I try to work towards every day to the best of my ability, right? And by taking this concept of white fragility and the fact that I reject it, and then proving my rejection of it proves that I'm fragile, that says that in your mind, I'm a racist, yet you have 44 years, almost 45 years of experience with me that should tell you that the last thing that I am.
See, but this is the whole problem. You're even taking it the way that it's not. You're either you feel like you're racist or you don't. And if you're so the whole point is that instead of like getting all defensive and everything, it's just like, I get it. there are a lot of white racist people in this world, and black people
know.
have to move through the world assuming that everybody's racist, because if they don't, then they're going to get hurt.
I know, but I do not believe that this frame, that framing things in this way is going to help. How long it's been, Mark? The book was written in 2018.
Yeah.
It is 2025.
Right.
7 years of DEI workshops, 7 years of all this stuff. Has anything changed in your fiance's life day to day?
No.
No. So is this
And
frame,
this
frame helping or not?
It goes back before, because I was going through DEI workshops in 2007, 2006, when I was working at Delta Dental. Like, this is not anything new. It's
so in almost 20 years of DEI workshops, of this framing.
Even longer than that, because it just depends on how far you want to go back.
Exactly.
Because since the civil rights movement was when it was put into law.
All of this binary, you're either with us or against us, with us or against us, going on marches, not going on marches, all of this stuff, none of it has filtered down into the kitchen table conversations of white people and black people honoring each other's humanity. And so that's all I'm saying. You know, I'm not rejecting it outright. I just said that when I encountered it, I looked at it, I put it through my own perceptual filters and worldview, and said, based on my own experience, overcoming my own casual racism growing up in the 1950s and 60s, right? All of that work that I've done on myself, to then encounter something that says that if I don't embrace this framework, I'm still a racist. It's like, I can't buy that. If other people want to, and if it works, but I'm not seeing results on the ground. I'm not seeing, racial harmony, even improvements since the summer of George Floyd. What's changed?
Well, nothing. As a matter of fact, and it happens all the time, and this is actually, to me, the point of all of this is every single time a black person says anything,
right?
White people get like, it's not that bad. It's this, it's that. It's not. It's it's better now. It's every single time. The whole white fragility shuts the conversation down, which is why nothing has really ever improved
out there. That's on TikTok. That's on the internet. That is not the kitchen table conversation. And if you want to, if all of your filters are the internet, not the actual human beings that you encounter with, yeah, I don't know what you can do with this, right? Because this has been out in the world for 7 years, 5 years, right? Since the summer of George Floyd. It's been there. It's been, and it's batted back and forth across the TikTok or the Instagram or whatever social media spheres are. And the conversations aren't happening, right? So I'm not.
Would it make you feel better if there was like a third option, to where either you're a full-blown racist, you're anti-racist, or you're just, I'm not actively combating racism, but I'm not being actively racist? Like, would that make you feel better if there was a third option? Because I get it, what you're saying. It's like, because from what I understand, I haven't read the book, but from what I understand, it's, if you're not actively fighting against racism, you are racist. If you're not anti-racist, you are racist. That's the binary that you're.
That's the position that she's moved to. Right, her follow-on book is very much that. Either you're full-on marching, working to rip down all these structural racism things, or you're a racist. There's no middle ground. I got mad during the summer of George Floyd when I saw the virtue signaling. All these white people that had never once commented on unarmed black man gets gunned down, suddenly posting selfies of themselves at Black Lives Matter protest. Like, get out of here. I don't need to see that crap. You haven't said a damn thing for years about all the stuff that black people have been complaining about, getting shot for no reason. Here's a story. Here's no. My neighbor, my neighbor, the interracial couple that live next door to me. I see her. She's taking pictures of the back of her son's car. I walk outside. I go, hey, what's going on? They were in the car coming out of Trader Joe's. They got tapped in the back by a guy in a Ford F-150, right? And her son, pulls into the bank parking lot next door. The guy comes over. Her son's already called the cops to report the accident. She gets out of the car to look at what happened. The guy gets out. He's like, oh, there's no damage, blah, blah, blah. Cop shows up. She's talking to the cop. Cop's telling her that there's no like not $500 worth of damage. What are you getting all upset about? Just, blah, blah, blah. And she's telling me the story. Now she's upset and she's telling me that the cop, he was young. And I'm like, I'm listening and I'm like, all right. And then about 5 minutes later, she tells me about her only other experience with the police, which had happened when her son, who's going to start driving in January, was still in a car seat.
Yeah.
And she got pulled over. She had pulled into a 7-Eleven at the junction. And it was Halloween night. It was dark. And when she looked inside the 7-Eleven, she didn't see anybody, and she just was a little spooked. So she said, you know what, I'm not going to go in. We'll go somewhere else. I think she was trying to take her son to get an ice cream or something. So she says, but as she's leaving the parking lot, she gets pulled over. Now the cop, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. No, black woman, right? And now the cop keeps her for 10 minutes, flashlight all over the car. There's the little kid, 5, 6 years old in the car seat. Searching. What were you doing here? All this stuff. And then, he finally let her go. Now, why did she tell that story after this thing? Because black people's interactions with police
are different.
If that would have been me pulling out of that 7-Eleven, the cop would have pulled me over, would have said, what are you doing? I would have said, well, I looked in the store. I didn't see anybody. I didn't want to go in. Oh, okay. Have a nice night. That would have been it. I'd have been gone in 2 minutes. Not 15 minutes later.
Right.
And so it's that, right? And I listened. I didn't offer anything. But the next day I saw her husband and I was asking him about it. And I mentioned the cop thing. And I asked him, I go, do you think it was racist? And he shrugged his shoulder. He goes, I don't know. And I said, how can you tell? It was just the attitude. But you can see it. It's what he has to deal with, just like it's what you have to deal with all the time. And so I don't want that to continue, right? If this works, then fine, it works. But it just seems to me, and I don't consider myself that my rejection of this framing is evidence of not being willing to sit down and talk to people and listen.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. If it helps somebody, great. If you, because like in what is that, Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, one of the things that he says, like how to be an anti-racist, is to look inside of yourself and to look for the ways that you make black people's lives worse without thinking about it. Look for that in yourself. And that's part of what being an anti-racist is the internal work. But that interior work is not visible.
Well, and I think that I don't necessarily think that you have to go to the George Floyd or whatever protest, or you have to be out there marching with a sign to not be racist. I think that it's possible just in your own day-to-day life to acknowledge your privilege and not try to do, treat people, or even, maybe you're not at a march, but, if you, I don't know, you see a black person getting harassed for no reason, maybe you can step in and be like, what's going on here? Like, use your white privilege, I don't think it has to go all the way to like marching and holding signs. It can be an
dealing with what it's in front of you.
right.
Right now, right here, right now, what's in front of me. And like you said, if you're walking by and maybe you're in a store and there's a clerk that seems to be giving a black person a hard time for no reason.
Yeah.
Maybe you just stop over and you go, is there a problem?
Right.
You know, and just step in and break that cycle.
Yeah.
And then, you know, maybe you're talking to the sales clerk and you give the black person a chance to turn on their heel and just walk away.
Right.
You know, because they weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
You know, and what I've, you know, basically, you know, after thinking about all this and stuff, I go, all it comes down to is in your interactions with people that are black or brown or whatever, don't be the asshole in their life today.
Right.
If you can do that much, if considering white fragility or anti-racism or anything like that enables you to go, all right, today I'm not going to be the asshole that ruins that guy's day.
Yeah.
That starts it. That starts it.
Yeah.
And if enough people did that, just, I'm not going to be that asshole today.
Right.
Change happens.
Right.
But it's not, but again, like, it's this performance. And that's, I think, that anybody can act. Anybody can go to a BLM protest and take selfies of themselves, even take selfies of themselves with their arms around other black people. Look at me. Look at how loving and kind I am.
Right.
And meanwhile, they don't, as soon as they leave that protest, they pick up their privilege and wrap themselves in it and carry on as before. That's not what we want. No, you're right. We do want the people to drop their privilege and stuff. What are you doing? Cat's getting in the, I think the cat's hungry, Mark.
Yeah, they're always hungry.
All right. Well, anyway, so what did you think about our, I appreciate, I think we're clear on where we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not disagreeing with each other, not intensely. I think we're on the same page. We're just coming at it from different sides.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I'm still evolving. So
we all are.
You think? I hope so. Anyway.
Well, if you're not.
What did you think of our little ChatGPT experiment? Did it reveal anything to you?
Yeah, I mean, it does show that, it shows me that the input matters, like how you're asking the questions and what words you. But yeah, no, so like it kind of showed like the input matters, you know, what you're typing into it does make a difference. But also I imagine, because at the end of the day, it's a large language model, right? So it while it does kind of tell you certain things like that are similar, even they were still different, even though we both typed in the same questions. And that might have to do with, I know ChatGPT does have a certain amount of memory, like it remembers conversations that you have. So it could be.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I wanted you to use your app version, and I just went to a
free version.
Free version. I didn't even log in. So
Right.
That was because my actual app ChatGPT has all of my explorations of white fragility. So I didn't want any of that poisoning what it was yielding, what it was going to give up this morning.
Right.
Right. Because some of those, one of the things that I've noticed about my own use of the tool is that sometimes you can try to leave a conversation like, okay, I'm done with that. And you move over and you introduce a new topic that you want to explore. And the answer will be bringing something back from the conversation that you said, okay, I'm done with that.
Right.
And that is one of the behaviors that I've noted in my use of it. it's just that leading. This particular test was not quite as dramatic as I originally thought it was going to be. It's not as different, but you can see the tone shifts.
Right.
Like when you're neutral, you get a nice overview. Here's what people say, here's what they like, here's what they don't like.
Yeah.
When you're acting a little bit like skeptical of it, it focuses on that. When you're a little positive, it focuses on that. And so then at that particular point, as you start responding to the prompts that it gives you, it can start really leading you down these garden paths, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's a work in progress, because in some cases I find that, man, if you read something and it like triggers you emotionally, even a little bit, and what you type in indicates that emotional state, the model goes absolutely crazy, because as soon as it detects any emotional imbalance, it tries to smooth it over,
Yeah.
right? And it's really interesting. I mean, we'll cover that in more detail in future weeks, but it's out there in the world, and a lot of people are using it, and they're pushing it. I mean, like, massively. Use it for this, use it for that, use it for other things. And I thought, it's one of the things that we have to deal with now. And
Right.
part of one of the reasons why I wanted to do it with the white fragility question was in the fact that you can get hardened in your position,
Yeah.
right? Depending, like if you're negative about it and you go, well, I just think they're wrong, it'll take you there,
Yeah.
right? And so and while it's agreeing with you and trying to smooth over your emotional upset, it's building this really strong case and giving you lots of evidence to back yourself up, at which point you end up becoming the kind of people on either side of that binary that can't talk to
Yeah.
anybody. So
Yeah.
yeah, AI is here, and it's GPT-5 is coming next month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's a brave new world out there of
Yeah.
all of these tools, and if they're helpful, great. But like I said, especially on these hot button issues,
Yeah.
politics, race, whatever, if you're not careful how you use it, it can drive you into, like, this is how it is because I got evidence.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably, we're over an hour, so we could probably save that. But I have noticed that, like, people will, like, post AI answers as, like, C. They'll like, somebody will say something, right, that they don't agree with, and then they'll respond to it with a chat GPT answer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, see, it's true. Now, it may be true, but not necessarily.
In other words, it's like you have to check it,
Right.
But especially in something like, well, I'm just going to try something before we go off. It's asking me a question. Would you like suggestions on how to work through white fragility in practice? And this is the positive,
Yeah.
right? But now I'm going to say, no, I think this is wrong. And now let's see how it responds.
One of the things, while we're waiting on that, one of the things I've been trying to do with Chat GPT is when I'm asking it a question or I'm asking about something, I request in my prompt to cite the sources that you're using to give me this information. So that way I can go and look at and read the actual, like, where are you getting this from?
Oh, really?
It works. It'll specific, like I say, specifically, please cite, tell me about, let me see, where's one that oh yeah, like, I saw something recently that was like, I heard someone say that one of the main differences between progressives and conservatives is that progressive people tend to care more about system and policies, and conservatives care more about the individual person. Like, for example, no matter what Donald Trump says or does, his supporters support him, even if he goes against something that he previously supported and they supported, they still follow him no matter what. Like, he literally will contradict himself, and it doesn't matter. They just love him. And so then I asked, can you expound on this and give me any sources that may back this claim up? And so I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but basically it says, it'll say blah, blah, blah. Progressives often weigh decisions against moral foundation like care and finesse. And then it gives me, granted, this is a Wikipedia article, but it gives me a source. Oh, here's a Wikipedia article where I found this information. So I've been trying to use that to where I can, okay, where did you get this from? I can go read the article myself and see if Chat GPT's steering me, which direction it's steering me, I guess. Yeah, but anyways.
Well, I went back and I said, okay, I went after the answer and I said, no, I think this is wrong, just to be shitty about it.
Yeah.
And then ChatGPT, thanks for your honesty. Can you say more about what you think is wrong? Are you disagreeing with the idea of white fragility itself or with how I explained its usefulness? And so I responded, I think it makes white people defensive instead of opening a space for dialogue. That's a really important point, and one that many people, including critics of the white fragility framework, have raised. You're right. Ironically, the concept itself can trigger the very defensiveness it's trying to address, especially if it's presented in a way that feels accusatory, moralizing, or shuts down space for honest conversations. Here are a few key ways to think about the tension. Your critique, it can shut down dialogue. If white people feel labeled as fragile or are told their discomfort proves their racism, it can feel like a trap where anything they say is interpreted as further evidence of guilt. This can create a kind of psychological stalemate where people become more focused on self-protection than on learning or engaging. Dialogue requires mutual respect, curiosity, and psychological safety. And if people feel shamed, they may disengage instead of leaning in. Okay. But supporters say, advocates of the concept argue that discomfort is necessary for growth. They claim white fragility isn't a judgment of character, but a reflection of how white people are often shielded from racial stress. The point then is not to accuse, but to encourage resilience. This is the response from that side. So, and then it proposes a middle ground. And then it asked me if I would be interested in looking at alternative frameworks, right? So it's still pushing back, but it's because it doesn't have any other history.
You're right.
Right. If it had my other history, it would probably be going in a different direction. But, we've been going for an hour, so we could run this experiment for days to see what it does.
Yeah, I mean, we could, maybe future episodes, we could try different types of prompts and stuff.
Well, it's just that, we can do propaganda or whatever it is, to start looking. I just wanted to highlight the fact that when it comes to these hot button topics, it's better to be careful and not just let an AI tool, just sort of build your own position. And that was why after you left last week, I decided that I was going to do a deep dive into my own reactions. And here we are.
Yeah.
So my name is Doug.
And I'm Mark. And this has been Occasionally Philosophical.
We like to think.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.